Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman, and today's podcast is with my buddy, good friend, dear pal, Kendal Card, owner of Black Ovis, Camel Fire, U.S. distributor of Crispi boots.
And now he's also the maker of Adak harnesses?
Bino harness. Today's podcast, we have Kendal in studio. Kendal's a good friend of mine. He's been on the podcast a few times. Kendal is an awesome human being. He's done it right, being the U.S. distributor for Crispi boots. They've continued to expand. He just got back from a trip to Italy where he visited the family again. I was fortunate enough to go to Crispi last year and hang out with them, meet the family, see how the boots are made. I learned a lot on that trip. I saw how they interacted, how Kendal would go over what the U.S. market is looking for compared to, European markets, and then figure out.
They have different ideas in boots.
Yeah, they really do. What suits us here versus there. And when they brought the hunting line here to the U.S., we really put it to use. Crispi learned a lot from our market because we're hardcore outdoorsmen here. We really are. We put our gear to the test. On this podcast, we talk with Kendal. We answer boot questions, just ones that have come in throughout the years.
We went through the YouTube channel, found a bunch of questions. People had sent in some questions. Got Kendal to answer them all. Like, how come there's not a Crispi boots in every state?
Yep. So it's a great little podcast. And then there's a part 1 and a part 2. In part 2, which will come out on Friday, on part 2, we talked about the new Colorado boot and the new Adak bino harness that Kendal has helped engineer and is bringing to market. So it's a good show. Both of them are good. Today is part 1. It's a good one. Let us know what you think. Before we jump into that podcast, we're going to announce the giveaways we have going on. Right now, you can win a set of Valkyrie broadheads of your choice, episode 434, or listen to it and leave a comment on that on the YouTube channel. Mountain Ops Ignite, you can win some Ignite if you comment on episode 441, which is the Elk Panel podcast. Let us know what you think about that show. That one had Corey Jacobson,
Ryan Lambers.
Yep, Ryan Carter, Jason Phelps. We did that at the Western Hunting Expo. It was a cool show. We're giving away a Yeti Rambler also, and that's for episode 440, which I did with my buddy Sloan Brown and Cole Kramer while we were cruising and ambushing people at the Western Hunt Expo. All 3 of those giveaways, you just go to those respective podcasts, leave a comment, and we're going to select winners on Friday. So you'll find out on Friday's podcast, part 2 of the Crispi podcast, if you won or not. Okay, finally, on April 1st, we are giving away a Hoyt bow for some lucky person who has signed up for the Gritty newsletter. So go to briancall.com, sign up for our email newsletter, which we will send out on April 1st. Right, Brent?
That's the plan, Brian.
And you'll win a Hoyt bow. We have a discount going on till the end of this month with Stockisons. Our buddy Tanner makes those cool moccasins. Use the code GRITTY, and you can get the discount off of those till the end of the month. I think it's $20 off, something like that. I'm not sure. But it's a deal for you, and it helps Tanner out, helps him and his wife get through college. You can get Grunt Work free for a month, the program, which is created by my buddy Chris Spieler. Use the code GRNT work, all one word. GRNT work, all one word. Get a free month. Go to gruntworkout.com to use that code. And then Elk 101, my buddy Corey Jacobson, he has the University of Elk Hunting course online. Put in the code GRITTY and you'll get $20 off that course. And anybody who's a hardcore elk hunter should do that. Okay, Brent, things I like and things I hate. What do you got for me today?
I found something that I really like. It came across Eric. I'm going to have to give credit to Eric Chesser for this.
Mm-hmm.
He posted about a guy. His name is, I can't remember what his name is, but he goes by the Mink Man.
The Mink Man.
The Mink Man. Mm-hmm. So if you type in YouTube, the Mink Man, you will find a channel where this guy trains minks to hunt other critters like muskrats. He goes in like canals, like in the city. Like they have water canals inside city limits where you can't discharge a firearm.
Joseph Carter, the Mink Man.
Mm-hmm.
Rat infestation destroyed by Bear the Mink.
That's the name of one of his. Yeah.
Cow.
Yeah. They're crazy. So he sends these minks down rabbit holes, pretty much, and they go after muskrats and rats and stuff, and like he just takes out rodents.
Dude, this is a little disturbing.
It's not for the faint of heart.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Oh.
And I am the Mink Man. When I was a senior in high school, I started learning about the American mink. I was told that mink were horrible, vicious little animals who were impossible to tame. I get mink from fur farms and give them a new life. In this new life, my mink live as naturally as possible, even hunting for their dinner the way a wild mink would. So come join me on my adventures as we learn more about this intense little predator, the amazing American mink.
This is a little disturbing.
It's pretty hardcore. I mean, it's animal husbandry of some sort because he can call these things and he can sick them on muskrats.
Oh my.
Using mink and dogs to control pests like rats.
Wow.
Natural and environmentally friendly pest control method possible.
So they got cats, dogs, and mink all getting rid of the rats.
Mm-hmm.
Using poison.
But like,
To die after many hours of suffering.
Yeah.
As well as being very harmful to the environment. In comparison, mink and dogs quickly and safely remove rats the way nature intended. How it all works is, the mink squeezes down into the rats' hiding places, and the dogs catch the rats who leave their dens in an attempt to escape the mink.
Wow.
so he has this team of animals that he goes to hunt other animals with. He's got like 3 different dogs and like 6 different minks that he trains, and he has a bunch of minks that he trains all the time.
That's a bad day for a rat, dude. That's a bad day for a rat.
Dude, they go after nutria. They go after muskrats.
Oh.
There's one animal on this planet that I won't mess with, and that's a nutria. Those things crawled out of hell, Brian, as far as I'm concerned. They are scary critters.
These mink are crazy, dude.
Dude, they're nuts, especially when you see them swimming in the water after them. So the muskrats are far better swimmers than the minks are. And you'll see these guys going after them, and the muskrats will go and swim underneath of the minks and go back into their holes.
Uh-huh.
And he'll redirect the minks, and the minks get pissed.
Mink.
The mink.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And, like, the minks have, like, this weird bloodlust where they'll go blind. And it happens in a couple of... Me and Daisy went down a rabbit hole the other day with this.
You did some research, huh?
No, he talks about it. Like, he's really knowledgeable about it, but he says that they go blind. Like, he's chasing a muskrat in one of the videos.
Oh, my gosh. These things are savage.
They're savage. But it got so crazy, like, it couldn't see anything. Like, they can physically go blind from rage.
What?
I'm dead serious. In the video that I showed you, the first one, that mink goes blind chasing that one. Like, he doesn't show the whole video. But there's a
vision comes back?
Yeah, after about like 20 seconds, it's like flopping around. You can see it. It's just flinging around, trying to figure out what's going on, and then it stops for a little bit, and then it shakes its head, and then it sees the muskrat and dives back and kills it. Part of me really wants to go in and get into this, Brian, because you know what?
Fred.
You know what I always wanted to do? Falconry.
Yeah.
You know what the problem with falconry
now you can
is?
do it on a budget.
Exactly. That's what minking is. It's falconry on a budget. Because here's the deal. Falconry, because of some crazy absurd laws, you can't have a falcon, but you can have a mink.
Oh my gosh. That mink just drugged that rat right into that bucket.
Yeah. He's trained them, so he grabs them, and then they go inside their kennels.
Uh-huh.
They take the meat inside the kennels, and he trades them a ball of really soft, chewable, easy to eat meat. Well, he wants the pelts as well as the meat from these animals. So he's trained them. They go inside the kennel, and then he trades them this meatball.
So they go and put the dead rats in the
kennels.
and
then he has to trade them because a mink is still pretty dang crazy and will bite the crap out of you.
It's like, don't take my rat.
That's my rat.
Here, you go put it in the bucket. And then when you're not savage anymore, we have a deal. Dude,
Yeah.
Brent, this is wild. So he's on the Hush channel?
Yeah, if you go to Hushin...
You showed me that Instagram clip.
Yeah, if you go to Get Hushin on Instagram, it's like his third or fourth one down. You'll see just a puddle with some black shapes in it.
Dude, I can't believe... They're savage. They are savage little guys. Like, they're taking on critters that are bigger than them.
Dude, those muskrats are the same size as them. Like, that muskrat I showed you was a small muskrat. Later on, one of his minks takes on a muskrat that's bigger than it. Way bigger.
They must be so freaking powerful for their body size, you know.
Well, if you look at them,
try to trade.
There's no excess fat on them. Like, they're just like tubes of muscle.
They just go through the throat on these rats. Just snap their throats.
Yeah. They know what they're doing.
They're so powerful, man. What a wild little critter. So that reminds me of that video. Check this out.
Oh, the one with the hippo?
Check this out. If you haven't seen this, folks, you got to see it. Yeah.
A large male hippo has killed the antelope and thrown it clear of the mud, leaving it as easy prey for the dogs.
So, why?
Watch this again.
What's up with that hippo? Why, what?
Look at it bite that thing in half. It's over.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's over. So hippos are extremely territorial, right?
Oh, is that what it is?
And they're not on anybody's side, right? And it looks like this antelope tries to escape the wild dogs. And it's fine. It's hiding in that wallow, but then the hippo just bites it in half and throws it on the bed.
My wallow. And I like how the British guy's like, the hippo tosses the antelope out of the mud hole. No, it got it shook.
That's how we would phrase it stateside.
Oh, 100% English, being very nice and proper.
Well, nature's savage, dude. It's savage. That's why when people get upset over the ethical kill of a bow or a rifle on an animal, or a pretty quick kill, people should just simply celebrate that.
That death, that arrow, is a blessing. 100%.
There's that.
Your other
quote.
option is a hippo comes along and chomps you in half.
Yeah, there's that quote: "Death by violence, death by cold, death by starvation. These are the normal endings of the stately and beautiful creatures of the wilderness." The sentimentalists who prattle about the peaceful life of nature do not realize its utter mercilessness. Theodore Roosevelt. Death by violence, death by cold, death by starvation. Yeah, getting taken out by much of the time by a human hunter is one of the better ways.
I would much rather have a mink go for my throat.
Every animal is going to die one way or another.
Janice and Dorn said it really good the other day that those animals, those trees, everything that's out there, it's only going to be on this earth for a time. It's only meant to be here for a time.
Yeah. I mean, we strive to be ethical as I'm much happier to see animals taken from the wild than I am to see them raised in captivity and slaughtered in a slaughterhouse. Not to say that some ranchers and farmers don't do a good job taking care of the animals and then taking care of them at the time of death as well. But there's something about an animal living a completely wild and free life, the way nature really intended, and then us pitting ourselves against them in a game of fair chase.
It's healthier. It really is. If you look at anything, once you start smashing into a cage, diseases start showing up.
Well, it certainly does, as far as from the human perspective. Being someone who goes out and hunts and gets my own food from the wild, I have a tendency to respect how difficult it is to actually get protein. This isn't just some gimme. Every day would be a chore getting the food you need to eat.
Chicken nuggets would be a real treat. If you had to go out there and snatch them out of the tree yourself.
That's right.
They'd be a real treat.
That's right. Anyway, yes, nature is savage. Okay. Do we have anything from the mailbag?
Not today. Send us some questions, people.
Okay. We're going to move on with the podcast. Enjoy this show. Let us know if you've got any questions. Appreciate all that. Leave us a review on iTunes. We always appreciate that. We appreciate all the love and engagement. And as always, friends, stay gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. How do you like that voice?
That's solid.
Thank you.
Strength.
I am your host, Brian Call, and I am here with my friend, Kendal Card. And we really haven't had the mics on much because we've been talking just hanging out in the office for an hour.
It's been awesome. It reminds me of some of the nights in Italy last year when we just talked. I mean, remember that one night we walked around Italy in Rome and we just talked and
about some pretty deep things,
engaging conversations for sure.
Folks, Kendal's sort of a entrepreneur, businessman, and religious philosopher kind of all rolled into one, like he can do it all. And he can hike your butt off too. And he can run forever. How many miles did we run that day in Italy? Was it
like 8 or something?
No, it was more than that.
Was it more?
I think it was 10 miles.
Could have been.
But it was, I mean, that's a lot of miles to run up in the mountains.
It was fun.
Was it Mazer?
Yep, in Mazer. Mazer and then Oslo.
Oslo.
We started in Oslo, ended up in Mazer. The best memory about that was those children. And I wish I would have videotaped or recorded that videotape. Mm-hmm. That makes me sound old. But just some really cool experiences in Italy with you last year.
It sort of felt like surreal, like we were in some kind of movie.
It could have been a commercial.
It felt like some kind of commercial or
totally.
Movie. We're running through these cobblestone streets and these old like Italian village areas, and it just felt surreal.
Yeah.
But on today's podcast, Kendal and I are going to answer some more Crispi related questions.
Boot questions.
That have come in, and we're going to talk about this new boot you've got, the Colorado. It looks like a pretty sweet boot. So I want to get into its construction, what is unique about this boot, why it's going to be my next favorite boot, and all that kind of stuff.
It is no biases in there.
The truth, before we get to the question, the truth is that Brian named this boot.
Yes. I feel a strong affinity for the boot now.
But don't let that go to your head, Brian. Come on. Stay humble. When we were in Italy, we were talking ideas for boots in between Brian napping.
Yeah, true.
He is a sleep alpha.
He is. And he sneaks them in the most interesting times and locations. But we came up with a concept for this boot and the designs, some of the features, colors. And then we remember Fetty asked us, what do you want to name it? And we kind of looked at each other, and Brian says, how about the Colorado?
You had a theme going with Wyoming, Nevada, Idaho, and I felt this boot, first of all, Colorado is awesome. And
absolutely,
high country comes to mind, a little bit stiffer sole, things like
that.
Strength.
Strong boot.
Yep. But also, man, I like the synthetic uppers, and I'm a big fan of the Summit for some of those reasons, and you were combining all those things into this one package. So
yeah, we'll get into that. That's
very cool. And then we're going to talk about this bino harness as well. This new harness that you've been working on for quite a while.
Yeah, it's called Adak. It's a new brand, and it's a project that I can't take full credit for. Local guy here, very, very passionate hunter. He's a chemical engineer, so he's extremely smart, a lot smarter than I am. But he's a fellow gear geek nerd, like loves to take stuff apart and pick it apart and reinvent wheels and that sort of thing. Great, and just a super passionate guy. And he came to us with this idea and concept, and we can talk a little bit more about how that transpired.
We'll get into this a little bit, and I'm always testing out new bino harnesses. Before we get into that, Brent, do we have any questions or whatnot to cover?
I do. I've got 2 questions for Kendal today.
Okay.
The first question is from YouTube, and this is just from the letter J. Can Crispi boots be resold?
Yeah, that's a great question. They can be. A couple years ago, we resold my Nevadas because I had the old version when we were using a EVA midsole. We put on the new dual density polyurethane midsole, which you find, it's not this one right here. On the Colorado, it's the one that comes on like the Nevada. We can resole them We work with a group out of Central Utah. Gary's Shoes is the name of it, and they are a third generation shoe store cobbler. The youngest son, Chris, the son that's now doing it. So Gary was the grandfather. Then Scott runs the show now, and then Chris, and he actually has met with our team from Italy. At some point, we'll also have him go over to Italy and learn some additional skills and things. But we resole those boots. It costs about between 80 and 120, depending on the boot. But one of the interesting things or unique things about when we resole a boot is that we don't just do the sole, which is like Brian, just that lower section right here. We learned about that in Italy.
Can you hold it up to this camera?
Okay. It's the sole is really just this portion here, that gray. This area here is the midsole. So most boots are resoled, they're simply just putting a new tread on the bottom. So much like your truck, you put new tires on it. By replacing the midsole and the sole, you're essentially putting new tires on your truck plus struts and shocks. So you're reinvigorating, I would say, the absorption capacity and the life of the boot. Because that's why you throw out a shoe or a boot at some point, because it no longer cushions. Mm-hmm. And it no longer gives you the support, and so you end up with strains and muscle fatigue and other things like that. So it can be resoled. It's not a hard process. What I would tell the guys, what we ask is people contact us, say, hey, my boots need to be resoled. We can provide them with a form that they can fill out and ship their boots directly to the guys there at Gary Shoes, or they can simply go to contact Gary Shoes directly. It's a pretty cool process. It's pretty neat too, because they cut it all away, grind it down, prep the sole, and then they take the midsole and sole that we import from Italy, that Vibram produces for Crispi, and then they put that right back on.
Let's talk just for a minute about synthetic versus leather.
Okay.
So this is a synthetic boot, this Colorado.
It's a combination, to be straight.
Tell me what this combination consists of.
Yeah. So on the Colorado, we've got like right here. This is suede. A little bit. It's a distressed leather, and that's why it gives it that. I mean, the word suede is actually just a description of what happens to leather, and then Cordura synthetic in the here, and then up through the tongue on the side of the boot. Cordura. Yeah.
And but I don't really see that shrinking much, and if you get that leather wet and changing the shape of the boot, or
it's not
conforming
typical
to the foot in any way, I don't see that happening the way a full grain leather boot functions.
Yeah, of course it's going to react differently. And then secondly, on the rand on this boot, like the Summit, is a polyurethane coated leather. So we're able to actually create, have the rand come up higher.
Yeah.
It's triple stitched with
I love that rand.
Yeah, it's triple stitched. Initially we were using Kevlar thread, but
so this is the new fabric
Dyneema,
that
right?
I saw.
So yeah, explain your experience, and
okay,
I can explain what happened.
Yeah, so the way that I was asking the guys, why is it that my synthetic boot springs a leak where my leather never does? A couple times I've had a boot like this where it starts to leak where my full grain leather doesn't.
Right.
The way that Crispi builds it, and we've shown some video on this, and I've talked about it in earlier podcasts, but they build a Gore-Tex bootie. It's completely waterproof. They sew the bootie together. They build the bootie, and then they actually put it in a water tank, inject it with air, and test it to see if there's any holes in it.
Right.
They know when they're done.
It's not sewn. It's the seams are welded.
Exactly.
Just correct.
So there's no holes in
process.
it, right? So the thing is breathable. It meets all the Gore-Tex guidelines, and it's a bootie that encases your whole foot, where a lot of builders, as I learned from them, actually build just a Gore-Tex upper, and then they wrap the bottom of that Gore-Tex bootie around the bottom of the boot, and they glue it down. And so it's not actually a Gore-Tex sort of bootie that covers your whole foot.
Right.
It's just it covers the top of your foot, and then it glues to the bottom of your shoe.
So there's a void essentially on the bottom of the boot, in between the sole and in between the midsole and the boot that does not have full protection, if you will.
Right. And so what can happen is over time, as in a boot designed that way, when you step or you walk, it can break the seal. The rubber can come unglued a little bit, or just, and you have this surface area, a lot of surface area, basically the whole size of the foot where you can break a seam in a boot that's built that way. Where Crispi actually builds a booty that your foot slips inside of. It will stay waterproof and it will stay breathable as long as that membrane isn't damaged, as long as it doesn't get a hole in it.
Or even like a scratch to a large degree. That membrane is super fragile. And I don't know if I don't know if you recall we talked about that.
It's really where the booty really shines is when it can be built into a boot in a way that it is protected. That way your boot stays completely waterproof, never gets a hole in it, never leaks, and the boot itself protects the booty. But what I found when I went down there and we were talking, there was some on the shelf. I was like, how come a pair of my Summits has had a leak, in one boot? And, I've hunted in some pretty gnarly places with like barbs that are 2 inches long, Devil's
like
Club and stuff
on
POW and other islands were super wet, or blackberry bushes where I've just like pushed through. Well, he showed me that it doesn't take much, just a little puncture from a barbed, like a blackberry or some kind of spiky, like a rose bush, anything like that, can pop a hole right through. So let's say it's this canvas section type material here, only it was Kevlar.
Right.
Well, it turns out that it's actually not that hard to punch a hole through Kevlar. Like he was showing us with, like, if you took a needle.
It all depends on the weave, yeah.
Yeah, it can just go boop right through. So you can have a completely waterproof, like breathable, a great boot, but all it takes is something that can puncture that. And I was like kicking through blackberries on the Oregon coast, just smashing them. And a few times I felt my foot get poked where a thorn went through the boot. And he was describing how, well, that can happen. And then they try to fix it or work on that boot for you. But that's why he said my Nevadas are just never going to do that because it's full grain leather.
Yeah, thorn's not going to get through.
It's not going to get through. But when you have this sort of, what material is this right here?
So this is Cordura on the side panels, and then what goes up through the tongue.
So this Cordura material, it can punch through that kind of material more easily.
Sure.
But then he whips out, a comparison of this new material. They're always looking for new stuff. And he said they've learned a lot supplying boots to the U.S. market compared to supplying boots to the European market.
We use them different. Our use is different than how the Europeans use them. And we take care of our boots horribly compared to the Europeans. Yeah, it's almost laughable.
So until after I went to Crispi, I didn't bother oiling my boots ever, my leather, or doing anything. I have been extremely diligent now, but we tried to punch a hole through it using different needles and stuff, this new material, and I couldn't get it to go through.
So
or scratch.
Yeah, one of the things that, and we can't use, in between the Cordura and the Gore, there are limitations on what Gore allows us to use because
it has to maintain a certain level of breathability.
So we're always experimenting with different materials that still allow it to breathe, but may increase. So this is still, you could still penetrate this with something sharp like that. But we're always trying to refine that and working with in Crispi. Fetty, the owner of the owner's son, Fetty's always researching different things, and so we're playing around with different materials to go underneath the Cordura, in between the Gore and the membrane.
But the stuff didn't scratch. Like if you took like a really sharp metal object that had a sharp corner and they were just rubbing across it, you were tearing up the Kevlar.
Right, and that's what we were using on the thread. Remember the thread? The thread is what we've been refining with. It was completely Kevlar, and everyone thinks Kevlar is, of course, is bulletproof, right?
Yeah.
And it would just shred it. He sent down on the stitched rand that same material. It's Dyneema with Kevlar and some other elements. He sent that down to the factory floor, and they said, "Hey, scuff this like 1,000 times or whatever that machine
can't
does."
Get it to fray."
And they brought it back, and he was like, "No, I told you to go do that." And I said, "We did." And he said, "Go do it again." Came back, and Fetty's like, "You didn't do what I asked you to do because it doesn't look worn at all."
Yeah.
Went down there and watched it. So
it's unreal.
These are small refinements that they're doing independently of us, but also that they're doing in collaboration with us. It's a really cool relationship, as you got to see. We'll go over there again at the end of this month to look at 2020 models and look at some refinements that we need to make and other things like that.
So getting back to leather.
Yes. Okay.
Right. I love my leather boots, and I ask them, why do I prefer my leather boots over time? When I put on a fresh pair of leather boots or a fresh pair of synthetic, I actually kind of like my synthetics at first, a little more than the leather. I want to have a new set of boots. And then as I wear them, and as I wear them, and as I wear them, as I wear them, it's like, nope, the leather. Like I slowly, and he's like, well, leather's it's a natural fiber. It's a natural thing. And it's remarkable how it can conform to your foot and start to feel like a glove. Leather's been around for thousands of years.
As long as animals have been around.
Where humans have been taking advantage of that material and using it. It's remarkable. And so when I get a pair of boots, he showed me why the leather's so supple, why a leather boot is so comfortable right out of the box with Crispi, because of how they design it on the outset. So it's comfortable from the time you put it on. A lot of other boot companies, their boots feel horrible when you put them on. And after 6 months of constant use, they finally feel somewhat decent.
Or less. I mean, some boots will conform faster.
I'm exaggerating.
Yeah, be nice.
But definitely with Crispis, and you've heard it said, if people follow along with a lot of people, Crispi is comfortable right out of the box, even the leather boots. And that's pretty remarkable. I haven't experienced that with the other boot companies.
Well, if you remember what Fetty said, when we say leather boot, most of us think just that all leather is essentially created equal. And the specific tannery that Crispi works with only sells to Crispi as far as boots go. Mm-hmm. And they've created such a strong relationship. And so they're looking for a specific type of leather, exact thickness, and they reject actually more than they take. Crispi does.
And they're looking at the flank as well, a certain part.
Absolutely. And you remember that discussion. So it's just like cooking a fine meal. You know, you have to have the right ingredients.
He even said they make the left and the right boot out of the same exact piece of flank from the same leather.
So that you get similar performance and similar
feeling boots. Yeah.
You know, they don't take a piece of leather. You saw the cutting machines. They don't take a piece of leather and say, we're going to do the right, bunch of rights.
Yeah, from this.
And then a bunch of lefts on the next piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
It's all done in pairs.
It's just that kind of attention to detail. But with that, there's a little bit of a downside I've discovered.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I've heard a few people comment back with the same issue. If leather gets really saturated, really, 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 really wet, and then it dries super fast, it's toast.
Yeah, done.
That leather can shrink to such a degree that and that can't fit your foot really anymore. It cuts off circulation, or it doesn't feel, it's too tight. That has caught me a couple times. And you buy a $400 boot, and then it shrinks on you like that, and now you can't fit it.
Yeah, there's some potential anger. I just plunked down, a solid paycheck.
And so with leather comes some responsibility, but it also comes with a very strong, in my opinion, upside in its comfort level. And it's like, I don't know about, it's just putting on that leather and your foot just completely, the laces, everything ties exactly right for my left foot, for my right foot,
Maybe that's why both of us love the Monaco Premium so much.
I think so.
Because I've worn the Summit, and I've worn just about every boot we make, and I love the Summit. But I'm the same way. I put the Nevada on, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm like coming home to mom's cooking.
Yeah.
It's like,
it just feels
nothing
good.
can go wrong from this point on, right?
So this year I did a really good job of treating the leather before I went out, and I used the Crispi cream stuff and, took care of my boots. Then I ended up, 2-3 weeks out in some super wet snow and then intense. And I didn't bring the stuff with me. And even though I coated it quite a bit, that much moisture just finally started to soak up. The leather started to soak up that oil instead of repelling it.
Yeah, of course.
Soak up the water instead of repelling it. And I made a mistake because I put them by a fireplace in the cabin.
You're impatient.
I didn't, the fireplace wasn't on.
Oh.
And then Adam Greentree went and lit a blaze fire. So I blame Adam Greentree. It's his Under Armour undermining me. Anyway, he got the fire hot, and the boots went and they just shrunk. Next morning, they were bone dry, but I could hardly fit my foot in there. So then I'm getting them wet and trying to stretch them back out, and I still haven't figured out what to do about it. My first pair of Nevadas, I was able to wear like almost a year and a half, 2 years, over 2,000 miles on those boots, way more than 2,000 miles, and never had that happen because getting them wet wasn't a problem. It's getting them wet and allowing them to dry too quickly.
Oh, okay.
So if they can dry slowly, your leather doesn't shrink like that. And so, I didn't put any treatment on those boots the whole time I had them. And they were great until they finally just hit their limit, by having never taken care of them.
Were these the ones that you built in Italy? The ones
that shrunk recently?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones I built in Italy.
What a terrible thing.
And so, anyway, so
the cost of that boot. No, I'm just kidding.
So what I'm dealing with now is the other boot lasted forever, and I had a few people tell me that they're shrunk on them. I'm like, yeah, I didn't have that problem, but I was really good about not putting them by the fire, not putting them near a stove, not doing that. If they got wet, I just let them dry normally. Well, this time I used them one season, couple of months, and then I had them, shrink, and they're pretty tight right now.
Yeah. So
I've tried to wear them a few times. I'm like, well, they're just a little too tight. So then the other thing that I went to get a more insulated pair of boots because I was hunting in some really late season environments. And as much as the Nevadas are my favorite go-to boot, they were too cold. Like they weren't quite insulated enough for riding a horse all day.
Right.
Because you're not really walking or moving, and right, you're sitting stationary, your foot are in stirrups, and my feet got cold, and I turned to
poor circulation.
I turned to John Barklow, and I'm like a week into this hunt, and I can't feel my toes, and I've been struggling with my feet being cold in general throughout the week. Not bad, but still uncomfortable.
Right.
And I asked him, how are those, what are they, Wild Rocks or
the Wild Rock?
The Wild Rock boot. I'm like, how are those Wild Rocks treating you? And he's like, He looks down, he's like, honestly, I haven't thought about my feet since the hunt started. They just feel great. And I was like, I brought the wrong boots. So, and it was cold on that hunt. I showed you the film today from that hunt. It was cold.
He and I talked at SHOT Show about that hunt, about that experience.
Yeah. And so
he felt bad.
Yeah.
I guess him and Jay were talking about, I guess they didn't talk about it either until about 5 days in. Each of them thought maybe they were unique and their feet were warm. And John finally goes, dude, are your feet okay? And kind of almost whispering, I think. and Jay is like, yeah, my feet have been perfect.
They were numb for a month, more than a month, like 6 weeks afterward. I couldn't feel my big toe. But I think that's a combination.
Probably from the shrinking. Some of that would be.
Yep, the shrinking.
It's going to decrease the circulation.
Exactly. And then the stirrups, the pressure in the stirrups.
Oh, yeah, he was talking about
and then the cold.
Learning how to ride differently, putting your foot differently in the stirrup.
Yeah, I think, it just puts pressure and blood flow. It's inhibited. And so anyway, so I went and got me some Wild Rocks about a month after. So for my next super late season on Kodiak, I wanted to make sure I had some.
Oh, right.
Those. So I got a pair. But I went to you and I was like, look, my last two pair of Nevadas shrunk. Like they felt perfect with the socks I wear and the setup I used, exactly perfect. But it took like a year and a half for my first pair to shrink, but it only took one bad choice, for my second pair to just shrink.
Well, Adam's bad choice. Let's
blame Adam.
Yes.
And so now, I got the other ones. I got them just one extra half size even bigger to account for if they shrink. And so far, they're a little large. That leather boot's just a little bit bigger, but I didn't notice that too much and fit. They still felt great. And now I feel like there's room in case something happens or they just get older and more worn and they do shrink a little bit. I've accounted for that, and they'll still be more usable.
Right. On that late season hunt, did you run a different sock system than you typically do? Were you running like a liner or a?
I wore a little heavier sock, so the boot feels like it's fitting right.
But you still had space that your body could heat essentially within that boot itself.
Little different purpose of a boot, right?
Of course.
Because it's later season, so I want a little more air pocket between my foot and the boot itself. And where, my Nevadas are traditionally in September, October, hunting elk, and I want to be able to, it's not so cold, really, that I want a boot any warmer, but I don't want any heavier of a sock either, because I'm hiking a lot, and
it's not really that necessary in my opinion that you need
warmth.
Go with a super thick sock.
But right now, what I'm getting as a Wild Rock, I counted for a little bit larger. What I'm going to try now, I don't know if it works, but some people told me to get those let the leather get wet so it can be pliable, and then put some wooden foot inserts, shoe inserts,
like what guys put in dress shoes, for example.
Exactly.
High end, leather shoes.
And you can screw them tighter, or so once you put them in the boot, you can then kind of expand them a little bit.
The toe box there, yeah.
Put those in there and let it dry out with those in place, and then oil it and take care of the boot and see if they'll kind of expand those little bit that I need it to be to fit more comfortably, and see if that'll work. If not, though, and I've heard a few guys say that works great. I don't know. I'm going to test it. If not, though, then moving forward, I'm going to go a half size bigger with all my leather boots.
Oh, you really?
Crispi,
Okay.
because I feel like these boots are still like new, yet they're just too tight. So, and I've never had that problem before.
We typically don't recommend that, like going half size bigger than, our boots, our fit. We talk to people all the time.
Right.
They say, hey, how do your boots fit? And we fit very true to size. If you're 11 and a half, which you are, you're 11, 10
and a half.
Sorry. Mm-hmm. You're 44. So 10 and a half in all your shoes, then I'm like, you're 10 and a half.
And this time I went with 11 in the Wild Rock.
Sure.
And I still like how it fits. And if it does shrink, I feel like, boom, I'm perfect. The idea is not to let them shrink in the first place, but they did.
Like you said before, there's a responsibility that comes with leather boots.
Yes.
And there's some care. One of the things you'll see, and then I think you have another question, but one of the things you see, if you look at the shape of the boot on the toe, this toe, and brand new boots, the toe has a build. There's a cap in there, as we saw in the factory when they build that. They shape that toe, and they're also shaping the toe with heat. And when the last or that mold is inside the boot. Remember, they were super heavy because that last is very heavy and solid.
Yes.
So they're building the boot around the last. What happens, and you most guys don't notice this, but the toe kind of goes more vertical. Not totally vertical, of course, but it has some shape to it. Over time, as a boot starts to break down, it will collapse. So you'll get instead of the front of the boot, like standing more, more vertical. It will be
slant backwards.
Yeah, it will collapse and slant backwards. And I saw that just a couple weeks ago. I put my Monocle Premiums. I put my dress shoe shape into the Monocle Premium, and it reshaped that toe. One time when we took a couple 2 trips ago.
That's where it feels shrunk, is right at the toe box.
Yeah, and so that's why realistically, and this isn't going to happen, but if you're buying a $400 leather boot. Each time you don't wear your boot, you probably should put one of those shaping, cedar wood inside because number one, it's going to absorb moisture away from the inside of the boot. That's going to help, but it's going to maintain the shape, especially the toe. And I've never recommended that to any of our customers, but having done that and then also going to the factory, we took a couple boots over there and said, hey, why is the boot collapsing like this? And they're saying what they told us was from the hot, wet, dry. That toe box will collapse and you get that flattening. And what they did is they put those green shapes, they put it
That's what
inside
I'm picturing.
the boot. Yeah, and they reboot, they did a pressing process with that and it basically reconstituted the shape of what that boot was originally. And it's an interesting process. And I bet if you looked at your boots and other guys that have boots they've worn for a year or two, and if they had the capability to put that next to a brand new one, they would notice that shape of the toe box is different.
For sure. I can already tell you it's already kind of shrunk across that.
Kind of just
where you tie it across the bottom here, this piece is just kind of all shrunken down.
That shrunk, and then this is ramped.
The rest of the foot feels fine.
Yeah.
It's just this little bridge where it's
part?
tight.
this part right. So this gets collapsed in.
For those that are listening,
Yeah,
it's right at the
right
toe
at the bottom of
box.
the lace. That it will collapse in like from the laterally from the side, but this shape here, how it's more vertical, will actually just collapse flat, not completely flat. But that happens, because of the wet dry, and it reshapes the boot because there's no support inside of it. That's why I may start doing that with my Nevadas particularly because I don't want that to collapse over time. And then all of a sudden you're like, God, these used to feel comfortable.
Right.
But the toe box, they just don't feel like I have the room that I used to.
So that's what I want to find is some kind of cedar or other wood block that I could put in there to try to
it kind of expand. You push it in and
get get the boot to shape better. If I had a last, I'd use that, a crispy last.
maybe I'll sneak a couple out of the factory.
Do it. 10.5. That right there is, I'm learning, there's care you can put into those boots that I just traditionally haven't. I've abused the heck out of stuff. And those boots last forever if you take care of them.
Yeah. And like the question that got us started in this discussion, once you hit a point where just the tread and life is gone, or the cushion is no longer, you've put hundreds and thousands of miles on it. Let's resole those. It's a pretty easy process.
Yep.
The turnaround is like if it takes, let's say, 4 days for you to ship it from your house to the cobbler, he'll turn that around in probably 4 days in factory and back. To, it's a 2-week turnaround tops most of the time of the year.
I'll keep you posted. As I throw in the last.
I would be interested. I'd be interested to see if you're able to reshape that to the point where it's usable and it's the same thing as leather work gloves.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my dad would.
You'll toast those.
They just shrink, boom, but then he would, he'd get them all wet and wear them for the day, right? And we'd do all this work, and they dry out, and they fit so nice. And then he'd oil them up, and my dad was a big leather gloves guy.
Our feet are not necessarily accustomed to taking the abuse that process may take, or the discomfort, I should say, not abuse.
And so I feel like, that's a situation where it re-stretched and then it dried in a more stretched out way and then the leather would maintain. So I think it'll go both ways, but I need to figure that out. And it seemed like it would make sense. It would work. So I don't know where you get those inserts for like your dress shoes, but someone told me that Cabela's makes them for boots.
Do they really? Okay.
So
I've owned mine forever that I put in my dress shoes.
Yeah.
Sunday, Sunday comes home from church, take them off, and I just slip that. I don't know. I just have it by now, but
yeah. So I'm going to look into that. So Brent, another question?
So we got a couple of questions that were along this line, and I just picked this one. This is by Jonathan Rondeau. He's a French Canadian. Rondeau. Crispi needs to find some Canadian retailers. As it is, it's impossible to buy their boots here. Have to pay $50 shipping plus duty. It's absurd.
There you have it, Kendal.
Is
he not wrong?
He's not alone, and he's not wrong.
A lot of people are calling for retailers in Colorado, Oregon,
maybe Australia.
So a couple things,
New Zealand.
Couple things, Antarctica. We need to get an establishment there.
Greenland,
just kidding.
Iceland.
So we've kind of taken a different strategy with our distribution. This is now our 4th year that we're distributing for Crispi in North America. Our goal and really Crispi's strategy has not been like we're going to take the world by mass. We recognize our boots aren't for everyone from a price standpoint, as well as for like a fit, and use standpoint. We've wanted to maintain the retailers that we have that we can supply them. Both from our factories in Italy as well as from our distribution here in the U.S. So we haven't gone out and opened every store and everyone that wants to sell boots. The other second thing that's done that's created, there's a desire, and then obviously his frustration of this question is I can't get them near me. I want the convenience of going within 45 minutes of my house to find them, or an hour. And we have people that will drive a few hours. And that will take time for us to develop. The one challenge in Canada is the price, with the Canadian dollar not being that awesome compared to the American dollar. You have a price difference there. The duties for us to import them from Italy into the U.S. and then go into Canada, jacks up the
cost.
There's a double duty essentially. So we're working on distribution coming directly from Italy into Canada at one point. But primarily the feedback we've gotten out of Canada from retailers is that it's too expensive. People are not going to buy this boot. Now we know otherwise because, we get guys ordering it either from us or from one of our online retailers. So there are a couple of dealers in British Columbia, and we're working to kind of go, to address that in Canada. Primarily the feedback we get from the retailers is too expensive. In the US, I know like Oregon, we've got some good progress in expanding dealers, and we're geographically looking at the map and saying, hey, where do we know there are groups of hunters, and where are we where do we need a good retailer? And that's the better thing, is that we want good retailers. We'll forego putting our boots in a store in an area unless we really feel like that store can do justice of telling the story about a good high-end boot and being able to take care of the customer. So the worst thing would be is if we allowed, like we have like each one of our dealers, we require they carry at least 3 models and full size runs. Because the worst thing would be like if you, Brian, said, hey, I'm going to drive an hour to stop by a shop, and they have
one boot,
1.5 models in 4 sizes, and you're like, this is ridiculous. So trying to grow it wisely. And thankfully there's demand there, and people want to try our boots, or at least try them on. They've heard word from different places. But sorry to the folks north of the border. I'm dual citizen, so I love you. I like a true Canadian. But I'm just
not there yet.
Not quite.
So Kendal, let's talk about this. Well,
how do you say that, and where is that from? That
Adak?
name. Mm-hmm.
Can we move on to this, or do you want to cover the boots
is there anything
at all?
more about the Colorado?
Yeah,
Is there anything more you had questions? I mean,
tell me tell me why I want this boot.
No, good question. In the discussion that we had in Italy last year when we were talking about what are we going to do, we're not just coming up with boots for the sake of like we need another boot. We're looking at where do we have needs. So, for example, 2 years ago we brought the Laponia. Last year we brought the Crossover. Both of those boots are lightweight. They address that light and fast category of being all leather, waterproof, but nimble, not quite like a trail runner, but similar in that nature. So we keep looking at different areas, and some people, we get feedback where guys will say, I want something, stiffer, or I want, less stiff. I want basically a slipper, or I need the Nevada, but I don't want insulation. So, 2 years ago we came out with the non-insulated Nevada. Last year we came out with the non-insulated Guide. So there's some of the feedback we got from guys saying, I want a stiffer boot. We came out with the Thor, and they said, nope, I want a stiffer boot, but I want ankle support, and I want a boot, though, that is a combination synthetic leather or more synthetic than leather. So we have the Brickstall, which a lot of the guys here at Mountain Ops will use, and they love, and the Brickstall SF, which is a stiff flex, and that was a lot of feedback from guys like Aaron that said, hey, your boots aren't stiff enough. So it said, perfect, we'll make them stiffer. We have the capabilities. So as we looked at where do we have a need, we said we want a boot that's more stiff than Nevada, has a synthetic upper or a combination upper, but has ankle support. So rather than reinvent the wheel, we essentially took the upper of the Summit, changed the coloration and styling, added the ABSS, which is our ankle bone support system, and that's that memory type foam that encompasses the ankle area. So as you lace it up, it conforms to your ankle, and outside of the leg of the boot, it creates additional support, so you have less propensity to roll your ankle, for example. But then we took the sole and midsole, that dual density polyurethane, as we talked about before. The Summit has an EVA dual density, so we took a little bit more cushioning midsole and Vibram sole, and then added a little bit of stiffness on top of what the Summit or Nevada is. So the Colorado is really this combination of a bunch of different needs that people described. If I had to say, like, what is this boot ideal for, I would say this is a guy that wants a breathability. I want ankle support. I'm going to be in technical rough terrain. that I have to have, some extra stiffness. So on the scale of 1 to 5, this is a 3.5 to 4 in that range. That created
Sums
the
it up.
idea for the Colorado. And you saw how that process started, and then we did, multiple iterations, different builds. Myself and Justin in-house tested some of the first protos we got last spring and summer. Brought in some different ones, made some changes. We had a couple guys in Montana that tested a couple. Yeah, pretty cool. I think this is going to reach a group of guys that are pretty psyched on, I go in goat country, or I'm in real technical, mule deer or elk country, but my feet run hot and I don't want a 10-inch boot. I want to feel nimble, but I need extra ankle support.
Yeah, it's a sweet combination.
And it looks good. I have to say, like, the feedback we've gotten so far is that on the shelf and at the shows, guys are saying that's a good looking boot. I want to get my hands on that.
I'm excited to put it to use.
We're pretty stoked.
I feel like it's the ideal for a lot of what I do. And like I said, I like the Summit, but I like that this has just got a few tweaks to it that are what I'd like to see in the Summit.
Yeah.
But it's just in a new boot.
And there might be some guys that say, well, why should I buy the Summit if this is like on steroids? And reasons being is Summit's lighter weight. It's a little more flexible in the upper. It still is it's an exceptional boot. It's one of our best sellers. And a guy that's running desert country or wants to be a little bit quicker and fast, less of a mountain type feel, but it's still a solid boot. The Summit's actually going to excel over the Colorado.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's a cool boot, and yeah, it's kind of fun to know that you named it. So
I know. So I gotta start wearing it now. Where I'm going to call it the gritty Colorado boot. So let's talk about this harness. I mean, on the boots, I'm going to try them out. I'll keep you posted on all the stuff we've talked about.
for sure.
Keep the audience posted on the boots and what I think about them. On this harness, tell me about tell me why I should buy this harness. Tell me that. Because there's so many of them on the market,
Absolutely.
And here you have this here's number 50 on the market, but this one has some pretty neat features, so tell me about that.
Yeah, super good question. Does the world need yet another bino harness? The answer is probably no, but to some needs and particular uses, the answer is yes. This product, it's called Adak. The brand name comes from there's an island in the Aleutian Islands called Adak, and it's all the way when the Aleutians kind of dip. It's the most southern city in all of Alaska, or town. It's really more of a ghost town these days. It has some really pretty cool, rich World War II history. It was where some of the battles against the Japanese on American soil were staged from Adak, and there was a big military base there, McDonald's, and the whole works. Right? They got
a military base, McDonald's.
I'm there.
The
post office. But anymore, it's basically gone. So in the late 40s and 50s, following World War II, they brought in caribou onto Adak as a food source.
Wow.
And so now, these days, it's just a destination for guys to hunt caribou. Nothing super trophy size, but
great place to go.
Yeah, I was introduced to the name from a good friend of mine that used to climb and ski mountaineer with, who invited me to go to Adak. I didn't end up going on the hunt, but I thought the name was cool and it had some meaningful. So that's where the name comes from.
So what's this material made out of?
So this is made
a little different than most of the harnesses I've.
Yeah, different how? How would you describe?
It's quiet, right? It's
super
quiet. It feels kind of foamy, but still quiet. I don't know how to describe it. It's definitely not. It's different.
Not the typical fabric. So
yeah.
By
sort
design,
of like sweatpants /
yoga pants.
Sweatpants meet slacks.
It's really yoga pants. It's a soft shell material. It's a polyester synthetic material that has a fleece backer in certain areas. Other areas it doesn't have a fleece backer. So let me tell you a little bit about how this came about and why we use this product. James Yates, who's the mind behind this product, he was creating a rangefinder pocket, and it started really as a rangefinder pocket that he could put universally attached to any other bino harness. And the purpose is that a lot of times we fumble with our rangefinder pocket, or we're trying to get at it, or you can't keep your eye, especially if it's a bow hunter, you can't keep your eye on your target if you're 60 yards out and simply both protect as well as reach down and grab your range find, put it back into whatever pocket you're utilizing, whether it's your pant pocket or whatever, draw and execute your shot. That was the challenge that he faced. So he basically on his kitchen table designed this rangefinder pocket and said, hey, I'm going to create something that I can universally attach to any bino harness, but that I can single hand operate, a hood system that would come down, lift up, open, grab his rangefinder, put that back down, and he can opt to close single-handed like this, or leave it open then execute his shot. And he really, said he felt passionate about this, that he feels like it allowed him to take a couple of very nice animals.
Absolutely. Like I'm so irritated by some of these setups where, I use the Leupold pocket that came with my Leupold rangefinder, right? But it squeezes the elastic. Okay. It's got the elastic stuff on there, and that elastic squeezes the like
the Vortex one. It's got elastic on the side.
Exactly.
It basically sandwiched that super tight.
So it's super tight, and so you're like jamming your hands in there, and then you're pulling it out, and then when you go to put it back, you're kind of trying to jam it back in. You have to kind of wedge it down.
Yeah. Or some of the pockets have a hood on it coming forward that you have to lift up to pull out.
Right.
So
and then you can't just grab it by like the tether and pull it out of this ones that squeeze it. It's holding on to it.
Sure.
And so I just want like a little hole I can drop it in, just like what you've got right here.
So that then you because if you're looking at a mule deer at 55 yards, you have to do a whole bunch of different movements, and or you have to look down to grab that your losing side of your objective. So the project was originally
started that way, which is pretty cool.
And James invited me to collaborate with him, and we have another guy that started producing prototypes for us here in the U.S. He's a super skilled guy, and he's a gear geek like me and like James. There's a little more to the backstory, in that James was talking to other people in the industry, but he ended up saying, "Hey, I want to work with you guys," and he and I have a little bit of history running into each other in the mountains. As we started to try and tackle the challenge of putting that rangefinder pocket and attaching it to any bino harness. And James was starting to construct his own bino harness that would work off the same concept of single hand operation, quiet with this type of fabric. The challenge was there's a couple others on the market that don't, that the bino itself is what maintains the shape of this face forward, this down forward. So without the binocular in there, you essentially you're set with something that this hood flaps or doesn't have any structure to it. This design right here is a patent pending design that allows the hood to come up and rest over it. So as you're wearing it, you simply are down here single hand. If you're 8 by 10 by,
seems like those binos just slip right in.
I mean, there's no sound on that. So whether you're range finding or bow in hand, rifle in hand, and you're stalking, you can simply bring that up in here. So he started creating this together with our prototype designer. We came up with this bino system, and the rangefinder pocket, because we have this kind of this wing on both sides of the rangefinder pocket, can if you're left-handed, you just move it over to left hand. It simply velcros and sandwiches.
Ambidextrous.
Back to the material, we utilize essentially a soft shell type fabric, DWR treated, that has fleece backer in certain strategic locations. Other locations it doesn't, to reduce bulk. So like the back of the harness is 2 different layers. One that's a non-backed fleece, and the other is a backed fleece.
How breathable is that stuff?
Fairly breathable. That's why we reduced it, and instead of doing 2 different layers with fleece backing, if we just do 2 single layers of fabric, there's very limited structure, and we found that it just wouldn't hold its shape on the back on your back. But we wanted to do something that was minimalist and didn't have a huge pattern. Okay. That's why on the straps we just use straight up cord, rather than you don't need some big wide strap. A, I mean, how many pounds are you carrying in this?
Right.
And B, you want to decrease the breathability or performance of whatever coat or jacket you're wearing. So from an ounce per ounce standpoint, this harness is extremely light, extraordinarily light. And from a functional standpoint, which is the whole reason it was built, it accomplishes for a lot of guys, single hand operation, very, very quiet. It's not full enclosure. I mean, it's very, very enclosed, and you can adjust how tight this comes up over the hood, how the hood comes up over the back. But
how does it feel when you got it on?
It's a dream. I hunted with it. Hopefully our film that Justin Nelson filmed of my elk hunt in Idaho, hopefully it makes it in the full draw film tour. Mm-hmm. But regardless if it doesn't, we'll still release it under Black Ovis, but in conjunction with Crispi that we did that film. But I used a prototype that was made actually out of the subalpine fabric. Just because I wanted to match, and we didn't have that fabric yet in the final color. It's awesome. James has used a couple of different prototypes over the last year and a half, and we've had a few other people utilize them, and
this single hand operation that's a big deal.
It's pretty slick.
And then being able to pull that rangefinder out or your binos. I was using Timber Net's bino harness.
Yeah, Solo Hunter one.
The Solo Hunter one. One of the things I like about it is quiet. And it feels pretty comfortable on your chest. It's very low profile.
Yeah.
Kind of like this. But what I like about it is the ability to pull the binos out in close quarters and put them back in without it making a whole bunch of noise.
Or without you doing some unnatural movement of trying to bring the binocular around a flap or other things like that.
Yep. And then there's no magnets, which have a tendency to mess with any kind of compass you've got.
Sure. Or being loud, sometimes loud.
And that's the other thing is you pull it here and it goes thunk, which is the downside with Solo Hunter, is if you're not careful, it can like pop shut and make a noise.
I got busted once. I opened up a magnetic binocular and had a cow that came in with a bull at like 15 yards.
Yeah, we just had the stockisons.
It flopped and it snapped, and I thought I would die. Off they ran.
We just had Tanner Howard on. He owns stockisons. He makes those leather moccasins for stalking deer.
Yeah, those are cool looking.
They're super cool. When you're in those close quarters, the last minute, when you've snuck your way in painfully slowly over time to get right in position, kind of like you do in South Cox and all you mule deer guys.
It's fun. So fun.
When you do that, that's when you realize how critical this is. Or if you're a whitetail hunter that likes to use his binos and wear them, you really need something that's extremely quiet. With that single hand operation, all that stuff is a lot more. I may not use this on a BC moose hunt.
Oh, totally.
Where I want something more like a Alaska Guide harness or something else.
They make a great harness. They really do.
Where you want something that's like super durable, full enclosure, almost like a secondary backpack.
Like the Badlands it's magnetic, but it closes. You could ride a four-wheeler and go through a sandstorm, and that's still not going to get any dust in it.
That's where I found like different bino harnesses. I like to use different bino harnesses for different hunts. And the Sitka harness I've been using a lot.
Yeah, I've used that one too for quite some time.
I hate the zippers. I'm like, why would we have a zipper on a bino, bivvy? But because zippers make noise, and then the material itself is too loud. It's a little too loud. Like it's easy to brush it, and anything that touches it on the outside, it's a bit loud. But for certain hunts,
it softens over time. I've used that Sitka one for a number of years, and
I like it. Feels good.
Sure.
I like how it fits, and I like the straps. I like the breathability of the back lacing system.
Right.
There's a lot of things I like about it, and I like that it's lower profile, and I don't sweat all over it like a big AGC harness. This I like this. I like this because I think it's going to be perfect for the type of hunts I just finished doing with Arizona Coues deer, where this puts you right at close corners. And some, like when I climbed the tree, I was climbing this tree to shoot that buck. I was up there and I pulled my binos out of that harness as slow as I could, and that Sitka harness just makes a little too much noise. It's not really a one-handed operation as much. You're kind of like fuddling thing, and there is a magnet, and it goes thunk, and it can grab on, and a lot of things. Where this would have been the ideal harness for that type of hunt.
We recognize. I mean, there's, like our tether, for example, like the way that the tether connects in, onto your binoculars. I mean, we instead of putting the snap down next to the binocular, which we opted to put it higher so that, because typically you don't want that snap to be touching this one.
Yeah,
which would happen, the lower one. So
totally. I've wondered why don't guys think about that?
You want that tether to be, have ample length to connect to your binoculars. There's no ring necessary. It's like you could just girth hitch this through. And then on the upper, it's not sewn in, because I personally don't use tethers. And
I don't either.
But
I also dropped
I've dropped binos,
2 pairs of binos off a cliff.
That weren't yours.
Randy Newberg's and Brave Brinkers.
I heard about that.
Back to back. Same 2 days.
I've started to use these a little bit, but I typically don't, or I'll do one versus two, because I just, like on the sit guy, just do one. But on the upper here, where the tether attaches, we just have this passing through the tri-glide. Once you figure out what length you want, you can hold it. It's not going to come out. I mean, but just like a climbing harness, you just back it through, slip that down through there, and you're golden. It's very manageable from each user can change it the way they want.
It still seems to me that with this open, though, if you lean forward, your binos aren't falling out.
They will. I've had mine pop out, so that's why I started using the tether. At some point, that ridge on the top there that holds the hood, it does help so it doesn't slip. But if you have small binos like an 8x or small like a Vortex Razor 10x42 that I use a lot,
it could fall through.
Yeah, it can. Yeah. And I've had it happen, but
yeah, it's probably smarter. Like my Sitka ones, the zipper comes so far down. That's what caught me was, the zipper was all the way down, and then when I lean forward, not very much, just a tiny bit, and they just whoop.
And the tether that they have is so long. I've had mine bounce off the ground. Like I'll lean over, it's like, yeah. I'm like, that didn't do what it's supposed to do. But this may not be ideal for every single use or every single person. Honestly, James had a passion for this project. I said, honestly, I told him, you can go build this with anyone, seriously. And I'm flattered that you would like to entrust your idea with us.
And he went for it.
Yeah. And he said, hey, I'd love to do, you're the kind of guys I'd love to do that with. And so it's been a 2-year project. We tried to produce it here in the United States, kind of hit some roadblocks and some challenges. And so ultimately we produced this in Vietnam.
So you've got a little bit of pouch here, little pockets, a little bit.
Yeah.
They're a little tight there.
They are a little snug, and I would say that's probably one improvement we'll make in V2. Mm-hmm. It's meant to be aesthetically,
you don't want to lose things.
Aesthetically a little nicer than just a single side piece. So you could put like a call in, in the front here if you wanted.
He's a scent checker a lot.
Right there. So like your, smoking bottle.
Yeah.
But most of these are used for like alcohols, elk diaphragms, and smoke in the bottle. So you can get that in there. It goes deep enough that it comes right to the neck of that. What I'll probably do is bring that up a little bit and then just make that quite not as, it's hard to find that balance of tight versus too loose, or, I've had wind checkers just pop right out of some that I've tested or used. We just didn't want to compromise on the fabrics, the Hypalon like we use in these areas for strength. It's been a fun process. I'm excited to bring it forth and under the Adak brand name.
So how much will this cost?
$150 is the retail for the whole system.
Okay. So
and it'll be sold initially as a full system rather than you cherry pick each piece, but separately we'll have in time we'll have just the bino harness itself with the rangefinder pocket. And we've got other products in the makings that will add to this. This size is our standard size, or what we call a medium, if you will, for 10x42, 8x42, and very small 10x50s. And then we have in production for a large, which would be
like a 15,
10x50 and 12s, and then an extra large, which will be 15x56.
Okay. For
you kids that want to carry like 10 pounds on your chest.
I do.
So cool, yeah. Like I said, we always, I've always got something that I've got going, and this is just the next stage. But, we'll have them. The Adak brand will be sold to Black Ovis and to Shields initially, and potentially a couple of other dealers that we've shared that with. Black Ovis is still, will still carry all the different vinyl harnesses. We carry them all. We do a heck of a job with the AGC, and we love them. And most all of our staff uses them. The Sitka vinyl harnesses, we do a lot of business with Badlands, but this will add to that quiver, and this is a separate entity from Black Ovis.
Very cool. Any last words? Anything you want to throw out there? Anything we should?
Nah.
Is that coming out in any other colors besides that one?
Oh yeah, so we do have this this other one here. We have 2 different colors right now. The
Look at you, Brent.
Wolf Gray and the Coyote Brown, and we're working with a couple of camel companies.
I wish that's what they said on crayons. Wolf Gray,
Coyote Brown.
Elk Blood
I
Red.
like that.
Elk Blood Red.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, it'll be those 2 initially, and we felt like those would go with most camel patterns. Like I said, we're working with some camel companies to create some in your favorite flavors. But
very cool.
I'm psyched to be on. It's good to chat with you, and we don't hang out
as
enough.
always. As always, always good time with Kendal Card.
I'll miss you in Italy this year.
Say hi to the family.
Getting gelato and
I am jealous.
yeah, come up. You need to come up to the house and do pull-ups with me
the
and the
kids.
boys.
Yeah. That was a fun night. Got to hang with the Kendal Card family. Yeah,
Doing pull-ups and single leg squats.
You had a cool family.
Thanks.
We need to get out and chucker hunt.
Heck yeah.
Kind of out of time this year.
We're down to
We're
last
gonna have to,
weekend.
We're going to have to
put it on the calendar for next year.
But we could do some fishing. Something.
Yep.
Definitely some hiking. Kendal and I have this feeling like Kendal and Jay Byer are the type that just hike and never get. I mean, they got an extra foot of length per leg on me, so that doesn't help. But
Cover twice the distance with one step.
yeah, I'm definitely
Short? Yeah.
No, thanks for having me
a great
on.
way to
It's
go.
good to chat. Fun to talk about what we got going, Crispi, and our new project with Adak, and
very cool.
all things boots.
Are you guys going to be at the Western Hunt Expo?
Yeah, we'll be at Western Hunt, and the Black Ovis booth is where we'll have the Adak, and the Adak can be. We'll have that website up here shortly, adakhunt.com.
So people can come and check out all this stuff at the Western Hunt Expo.
Try on the Colorado. At the Crispi booth, we'll have the Colorado available, and also at the Portland show if this goes out soon enough.
Northwest
that
Sportsman
Portland
show.
Yeah, the Sportsman show.
Okay.
But come try the Colorado at Western Hunt.
Cool.
Get your size and see if it's right for your foot.
If you are planning to come to the Western Hunt Expo and you haven't bought tickets yet, you can get $10 off.
Yes.
Each your tickets.
Yeah.
If you buy them on Mountain Ops, or if you buy them at the Hunt Expo, but use the code
MTNOPS.
Yeah, Mountain Ops. So that's
and
cool.
we may have one more surprise at the Black Ovis booth at Western Hunt.
Another product,
No,
but something.
something big. So,
Very cool.
yeah, we'll see. Oh, and we'll announce that through our Black Ovis email and social.
Okay.
So we're hoping that comes together. If it doesn't, then you'll just have to wait for the surprise.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Gritty Podcast. Send your questions in at briancall.com. DM us on Instagram. Hit us up there.
Leave a comment on this YouTube video.
On
If you got
YouTube.
more boot questions, we'll gather them up and maybe do this again.
Yeah. And as always, stay gritty, friends.
Stay gritty.